John never forgot that morning in Denver. The morning that felt normal until it wasn't. It began with the soft light of sunrise pressing through his blinds, the faint hum of traffic outside, and the usual quiet in his apartment. Everything looked the same: the wooden floors, the jacket he left on the chair, the coffee cup waiting next to the sink. But something felt wrong. He couldn't explain it at first. It was just a feeling. A slight pressure in his chest, an uneasiness crawling through him. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, trying to shake off the strange heaviness. Then he noticed Emily's side of the bed empty, cool, untouched. He whispered her name once, almost casually. Emily? No answer. He tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. John stood and walked to the hallway, expecting to see her grabbing her things, getting ready for work. Maybe humming the way she usually did, when she thought no one could hear her. But the hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Her shoes were still lined up by the door, the ones she always wore on Tuesdays. Her coat hung exactly where she left it the night before. Even her favorite scarf sat draped over the hook, untouched. She hadn't left for work. She hadn't stepped outside. She hadn't gone anywhere. And suddenly the uneasy feeling inside him sharpened. A question rose in his mind, slow but heavy. Why does the apartment feel empty? But her things are all still here? He checked the kitchen. No note. No message on the counter. No half-finished breakfast or open coffee pod. Just silence. John reached for his phone and sent a quick text. Everything okay? You up? He waited, staring at the screen, hoping it would light up. Nothing. He tried calling. Straight to voicemail. That's when the worry took its first real breath. He walked into the living room, pacing slowly, trying to reason with himself. Maybe she took an early walk. Maybe she needed some air. Maybe she went downstairs to grab something. But Emily never left without saying something. Not even once in all the time he'd known her. Something didn't add up. He checked the bathroom, empty. Checked her small drawer in his closet, untouched. Checked the patio, still. It was like she had simply stepped out of existence. A strange chill moved through him as he stood in the center of the room. The morning light didn't feel warm anymore. The apartment didn't feel safe. And the silence didn't feel natural. He felt confusion first, then worry, then something sharper, something he didn't want to admit. Suspicion. Not the wild, dramatic kind, but the quiet, heavy kind. The kind that whispers, something isn't right. You need to look closer. His mind raced with questions he wasn't ready to face. Where would she go this early? Why didn't she take her things? Why didn't she answer? And why did the air feel so different, like the start of a storm he didn't see coming? John stood there, staring at the door, sensing the shift before he fully understood it. This wasn't a simple morning. This was the first sign, the first crack in the picture he thought was perfect. The first moment he realized Emily wasn't where she was supposed to be. And maybe hadn't been for a long time. He didn't know it yet. But her sudden disappearance wasn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was the beginning of a truth that would shake his entire world. And the unanswered questions filling that silent apartment were only the start. Before everything fell apart, before the silence and the questions, John remembered a time when Emily felt like the single brightest part of his life. Their story didn't begin with heartbreak. It began with winter lights, soft music, and a moment that felt almost accidental. It was 2 years earlier at a charity gala in downtown Denver, one of those December nights where the air is crisp. The streets glow with holiday decorations, and everyone seems a little kinder than usual. John had been working the event through the production company he freelanced for, carrying equipment in and out of the back hall. Emily was the event planner that night, wearing a simple velvet dress and running on iced coffee and determination. She moved through the venue like she was keeping the whole evening stitched together with Nothing but energy and hope. Their paths crossed in the most unexpected way. John turned a corner too quickly. She stepped backward at the same moment, and the two collided, sending a tray of tiny candles wobbling and clattering onto the carpet. Emily gasped, covering her mouth in embarrassment. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see." John just laughed softly, kneeling to help her pick up the candles one by one. That was the first time he saw her smile, the kind that felt warm enough to melt away the cold outside. They talked for a few minutes, then a few more. She teased him for being too calm for someone on a tight schedule. He joked that she had too much energy for one person. It was simple. It was natural. It was the kind of connection that didn't feel forced or rushed. And from that moment forward, they found reasons to see each other again. Coffee after work, walks around the city, weekend dinners that turned into late-night conversations. Their relationship didn't explode into existence. It grew quietly, gently, like a slow sunrise. Neither of them pressured the other. Neither of them pretended to be something they weren't. It was real. And for a long time it was good. Over the next 2 years they built something steady, shared routines, inside jokes, plans that stretched far beyond the next week. Emily would bring him pastries from the bakery below her office. John would drive her to the airport for her work events, even at 5 a.m., because she hated early morning ride shares. They talked about someday moving in together, maybe finding a place with a small balcony for her plants and a quiet study corner for him. They weren't engaged, but they were dreaming in the same direction, or so John believed. Then came the idea for the event. It was Emily's suggestion, something she described as a celebration of us, not an engagement party, but a symbolic moment to mark how serious they were about building a future together. They spent weeks talking about it, where it should be, who should come, what it should feel like. Emily said she wanted something warm, something with character, something that felt like the beginning of a story instead of the end of one. That's how they found the lodge, a cozy, rustic venue on the edge of Denver, surrounded by tall pine trees and long stone paths. The moment they toured it, Emily's eyes lit up. She held onto John's arm and whispered, "This feels right. This feels like us." John agreed without hesitation. They put down a deposit together, chose a tentative date, and started imagining how everything would look: the lights, the music, the guests, the moment they would stand in front of everyone and talk about their next steps. For John, the venue became a symbol of everything they'd built and everything they were planning to become. He had no idea that someday he would return to that same place. Not with excitement, not with celebration, but with a truth he never expected to face. Because back then, the life they built felt unbreakable, and he had no reason to believe Emily felt anything different. John would later look back and realize the signs were there long before the morning she vanished. They didn't appear suddenly. They crept in slowly, almost quietly, like shadows slipping under a door. At first he ignored them, but now, thinking back, he could see every warning clearly. It began with small changes. Emily, who used to greet him with warmth and long hugs at the end of the day, suddenly started walking past him toward the kitchen, saying she was too tired to talk. She wasn't angry. She wasn't upset. Just didn't. Like her mind was living somewhere he couldn't reach. John tried not to panic. Everyone goes through stress, he reminded himself. Work was busy for her. She had new clients, new events, new responsibilities. Maybe she was overwhelmed, but still, something felt different. One evening, they were watching a movie together when her phone buzzed. She quickly grabbed it, her eyes darting across the screen before she turned the phone face down. She never used to do that. John didn't say anything, but a small ache settled in his chest. A week later, he noticed she had changed the password on her laptop, the one she often used while lying beside him on the couch. "Didn't your password used to be your niece's birthday?" he asked, trying to sound casual. She froze slightly before answering. I updated it. I just needed more privacy. More privacy. That line echoed in his mind longer than it should have. Emily had always been open with him. She didn't hide her messages, she didn't whisper on calls, she didn't turn away when her screen lit up. But suddenly, everything she touched required a lock. John didn't want to jump to conclusions, so he convinced himself to stay calm. Trust her. Give her space. Don't assume the worst. But the nights began to stretch longer. Emily started coming home later than usual, claiming she had last-minute event issues or meetings that ran late. She smelled like outside air and a hint of perfume that wasn't hers. She avoided eye contact when he asked how her day went, and every time she walked past him, it felt like she was drifting 1 inch further away. John tried to be supportive, reminding himself that relationships go through rough patches. He asked her if she needed help, if she wanted to talk, if something was bothering her. Emily always responded the same way. I'm fine. I'm just stressed. Don't worry. But people who are fine don't avoid conversation. They don't pull away from hugs. They don't treat home like a place they're only visiting. Little cracks began to form in their routines. They stopped cooking together. They stopped sharing stories about their day. Emily's laughter, the sound that once filled their evenings, became rare, replaced by quiet sighs and distant stares. One night, John woke up and found her sitting on the couch in the dark, staring at her phone with a worried look on her face. When she noticed him, she quickly clicked the screen off and forced a smile. You scared me, she whispered. But her voice didn't sound scared. It sounded guilty. John wanted to ask what she was hiding, but the words felt heavy, as if asking would break something between them. So he swallowed his worry. He tried to believe her. He told himself that love required patience, even when things felt unclear. But deep down, something inside him was shifting, a quiet alarm beginning to ring. Something wasn't right. Not with her. Not with them. And even though he tried to push the thoughts away, they kept returning, louder each time, because the truth was simple. Emily wasn't pulling away because of stress. She was pulling away because she was already somewhere else, emotionally, mentally, and soon, physically. And these small cracks were only the beginning of the storm he didn't see coming. The morning she disappeared didn't start with chaos. It started with quiet, the kind of quiet that feels normal for a moment. Until a DOESN, single quotes T. John woke before his alarm, a strange heaviness pressing on his chest. He reached out instinctively toward Emily's side of the bed, expecting to feel warmth, a blanket shift, maybe even her sleepy whisper, but the sheets were cold. Not, she woke up early, cold. Cold like she hadn't slept there at all. He sat up slowly, blinking in confusion. Emily? No answer. He walked to the hallway, expecting to see her shoes gone, her bag missing. Some sign she had simply stepped out for a moment, but everything looked untouched. Her shoes lined up neatly, her coat hanging where she always left it, her favorite scarf draped over the hook. It didn't look like she left. It looked like she vanished. A small pinch of worry pulled at him, but he tried to push it aside. Maybe she took a morning walk, maybe she went to grab breakfast. He sent her a quick text. Hey, where'd you go? Everything okay? 5 minutes passed. 10:30. No answer, he called. Straight to voicemail. By noon, panic wasn't knocking anymore. It was breaking in. He called again. Then again. Then enough times that he lost count. Still nothing. By afternoon, he drove to her apartment, the place she kept even though she spent most nights at his. Each step up the staircase felt heavier, like he already knew what he would find but didn't want to believe it. When he reached the door, he froze. Her spare key, the one she kept on a little red keychain, was sitting on the welcome mat. Just sitting there, quiet, final. His heartbeat thudded painfully in his ears as he unlocked the door. The moment he stepped inside, he knew. Her presence was gone. The small plants she always kept by the window, gone. Her framed photo on the shelf, gone. Her makeup bag, the blanket she loved, the books she left scattered on the coffee table, all gone. Everything that made the apartment feel like Emily was erased. But the strange part? There were still traces of her life, clothes she never wore, old receipts, a few forgotten items, almost like she packed quickly, taking only what mattered to her most. And none of those things were him. He called her again, his hands shaking, even though he already knew she wouldn't answer. The silence that followed felt colder than the empty apartment. He leaned against the wall, forcing himself to breathe. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an emergency. This wasn't stress. Emily didn't leave because she needed space. She didn't leave because she was overwhelmed. She left because she chose to walk away, without explaining, without saying goodbye, without giving him a single chance to understand what went wrong. And the harshest part of all was painfully clear. She didn't disappear accidentally. She disappeared intentionally. As the sun dipped lower outside, John stood in the center of her empty apartment, feeling the truth settle like a weight he couldn't shake off. This was the turning point, the moment everything he believed about them broke apart. He wasn't confused anymore. He wasn't imagining anything. He had just been handed the reality he was trying so hard not to see. Emily didn't want to talk. Emily didn't want to fix things. Emily didn't want him in her life, not even enough to say it out loud. And as John closed the door behind him, spare key still lying silently on the floor, he knew one thing for sure. The person he thought he knew was not the person who walked away that morning. A week passed. 7 long days where John replayed every moment with Emily, searching for a clue he'd missed, a sign he didn't understand. Every morning he woke up hoping for a message. And every night he went to sleep realizing none was coming. But nothing prepared him for the call that arrived on a quiet Thursday afternoon. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail, until something inside him told him to answer. "Hello. This is Heather from Pinneview Lodge," a cheerful voice said. "We're calling to confirm the new date Emily selected for your event." John froze. "New date?" He repeated slowly, his voice barely steady. "Yes," Heather continued, unaware of the storm she was bringing to life. "She made several updates. We just need final approval before moving forward." John felt the air leave his chest. Emily had changed the date of their event. The event they planned together. The event she walked away from without a word. He tried to stay calm. "Could you tell me what updates she made?" he asked. There was a soft shuffle of papers on the other end. "Yes," Heather said. "It looks like, well, you've been removed from the contract entirely. The primary contact is now Evan Brooks." The name hit him like a punch he never saw coming. Evan Brooks. A co-worker. Someone Emily had mentioned once or twice, casually, harmlessly. Someone she described as just a guy from the office. But now his name was sitting on the contract that was supposed to be for John and Emily's future. John swallowed hard. But his throat felt tight, burning with the kind of pain that steals your breath before you even understand why. He asked the question carefully. "What exactly did Emily change?" "Well," Heather replied, still sounding neutral, "the guest list is updated. The payment schedule is updated. The theme is slightly altered. And Evan Brooks is listed as co-host." Emily said she wanted the event to reflect their story. Their story. Those 2 words were enough to break whatever hope he had left. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't stress. This wasn't some moment of fear she needed time to understand. This was deliberate, planned, quietly executed behind his back. Emily didn't just leave John, she replaced him. And she did it with someone she swore meant nothing. John ended the call politely. But the moment he set his phone down, his legs felt weak. He sat at the edge of his couch, staring at nothing, letting the truth settle into place. She didn't accidentally drift away. She didn't disappear because she was overwhelmed. She didn't vanish because she was scared. She walked out with intention. And she had already built a future with someone else, using the foundation he helped create. The betrayal didn't punch or shout. It settled like a cold shadow, quiet and heavy. But beneath the heartbreak, something else rose inside him. Clarity. Real, sharp, undeniable clarity. For the first time in weeks, John's mind felt focused. The questions that had been eating at him suddenly had answers, painful ones, but answers nonetheless. He realized he didn't need to chase her. He didn't need to beg for explanations. He didn't need to wonder why she changed. Her actions told the truth. She didn't have the courage to say out loud. And with that truth, the fog inside him finally lifted. He wasn't powerless. He wasn't broken. He was waking up to a reality she tried to hide, waking up to the lies she wrapped in silence. And as the hurt settled, something stronger began to take shape. Determination, a quiet strength. A promise to himself that he wouldn't be erased from a story he helped build. Because now he knew exactly where he needed to go. And exactly what he needed to do. John didn't sleep much the night he learned the truth. His mind kept replaying the venue call over and over again. Every detail, every word, every confirmation that Emily hadn't just stepped away from their relationship. She had erased him from it. But instead of falling apart, something inside him shifted. The pain didn't disappear, it settled, becoming a quiet fire in his chest. A fire that didn't burn wildly, but steadily, purposefully. This time, he wasn't moving from emotion. He was moving from clarity. He spent the next morning gathering everything tied to the venue booking, the receipts with both their names on them, the email confirmations, the original contract, the shared payment agreement Emily insisted they sign for fairness. He placed each document into a folder, aligning them neatly, almost like preparing evidence for a truth he needed to bring into the light. But his plan wasn't about revenge in the dramatic sense. He wasn't trying to expose Emily publicly. He wasn't interested in yelling or accusing or demanding apologies. He wasn't seeking chaos. He was seeking closure. Real closure. The kind you get when you confront something calmly, face to face, without running from the truth. He stared at the neatly arranged folder and breathed out slowly. This was it. This was how he would take back control of the story she tried to rewrite. Behind his back. So he made the call. He dialed Pinneview Lodge, the venue that once symbolized hope but now stood as the center of everything she hid. Heather, the coordinator, answered with her usual friendly tone. "Hi, this is John Michaels," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I was hoping to stop by today. I'd like to finalize a few details on the event." She sounded delighted. "Of course, John. Come by any time before 5. I'll have the planning room ready." As he hung up, he felt something he hadn't felt in days: focus. A calm, grounded strength. He wasn't going there to argue with Emily. He wasn't going there to win anything. He was going because he refused to disappear from a story he helped build. If she wanted to rewrite the narrative, she would have to look him in the eyes while doing it. The drive to the lodge felt different this time. The winding road through the tall pine trees had once looked magical. Now it looked like a path toward truth. A truth that had been hiding in her behaviors, in her silence, in her sudden distance. He didn't grip the steering wheel tightly. He didn't breathe heavily. He was calm. Steadier than ever. Because this wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about dignity. When the lodge finally came into view, the warm brick walls, the large wooden beams, the soft lights glowing from the windows, John felt a strange mix of nostalgia and resolve. This place was supposed to be the beginning of their next chapter. Now, it was becoming the stage where everything would unravel. As he parked and stepped out of the car, he took one long breath of the crisp Denver air. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't nervous. He was ready to see the truth, ready to hear it, ready to face whatever waited for him on the other side of those doors. Because sometimes, closure doesn't come from walking away. Sometimes it comes from walking straight into the place where everything changed, and refusing to let someone else control the ending. With that quiet strength settling into his bones, John walked toward the lodge entrance. Today, the truth would finally come out, and he would be the one to face it, calmly, clearly, and on his own terms. John expected an empty planning room, maybe a few brochures on the table, maybe Heather waiting with a polite smile. He did not expect what waited behind that door. The moment he stepped inside, the world seemed to slow. Emily was there, and standing beside her was Evan Brooks. For a second, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched so tightly, it felt like the air might crack. Emily's eyes widened, her face draining of color. Evan shifted uncomfortably, as if he had been caught somewhere he didn't belong. Heather looked confused, glancing between the three of them, unaware of the emotional storm she had just witnessed forming. John didn't raise his voice. He didn't demand answers. He simply stepped forward, calm but unshakably steady. "Didn't expect me?" he asked quietly. Emily swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "John, I thought you weren't coming." Her words trembled, carrying the weight of everything she had been hiding. John took a slow breath. "You changed the date. You removed my name. And you didn't think I'd show up to the place we planned together?" Emily looked down, guilt washing across her face. Evan tried to step in. "John, look, this isn't what you think." But John lifted a hand, stopping him without aggression. "I know exactly what it is." The tension in the room thickened. Even Heather sensed something deeper was happening and quietly excused herself, closing the door behind her. Now it was just the three of them. Emily finally met his eyes. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know how to tell you. Everything started changing, and I felt lost. I tried to end things gently. I just didn't know how." "You disappeared," John replied, calm but firm. "You didn't end things. You avoided them." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I know, I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to face me," he corrected softly. Emily nodded, her shoulders shaking. Then, in a voice that sounded exhausted and defeated, she admitted everything. She told him she had been drifting emotionally for months, long before she walked out. She felt overwhelmed by the seriousness of their plans. She didn't know how to express her doubt without destroying him. And somewhere in that confusion, she let Evan become the person she leaned on. Evan looked uncomfortable, unable to say anything that would make the situation better. John listened without interrupting. No anger, no shouting. Just calm understanding mixed with deep disappointment. "And the venue?" John asked quietly. Emily hesitated, then told the truth. She admitted she changed the date because she wanted to start a new chapter with Evan. She hadn't meant for John to find out this way, but she also hadn't expected him to show up. John reached into his folder, pulling out the original contract. He placed it gently on the table. No dramatic motions, no slamming papers, just certainty. "This is still under both our names," he said. "Which means you couldn't remove me without a full renegotiation." Emily's lips parted. "John, I didn't think." "I know," he said softly. "You didn't think. You just acted." Then he picked up the pen on the table and signed the release form he had prepared. A clean, smooth signature. A quiet ending. When he looked at her one last time, his voice carried a painful truth, but also strength. "You didn't take me out of your story, Emily. You just showed me I was never meant to stay in it." Emily looked shattered. Evan looked speechless. John didn't linger. He didn't demand apologies. He didn't ask for explanations. He simply walked out, not broken, not defeated, but free. Because he finally understood that closure doesn't come from someone else's honesty. Sometimes it comes from your own. The days after the confrontation at the venue felt strangely quiet for John. Not empty, not heavy, just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a storm after every piece of debris has already fallen. For the first time in weeks, he woke up without checking his phone. For the first time in weeks, he didn't replay conversations in his mind. And for the first time in weeks, he felt a hint of something he thought he'd lost. Peace. But that peace didn't come easily. Because Emily didn't disappear this time. She reached out. At first, it was a short text. Can we talk? Then another, I owe you an explanation. Then a longer message. I didn't handle things right. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you like this. But John didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because he knew where responding would lead. He wasn't looking for another loop of confusion, or apology, or temporary clarity. He wasn't trying to fix something she had already walked away from. He was choosing distance, not to punish her, but to protect himself. So he let the messages sit unread. Not deleted, just untouched. A reminder that he was finally choosing himself. And slowly, life began to rebuild itself around him. John started spending more time with friends he hadn't seen in months. They'd invite him out for late-night burgers, weekend hikes, or quiet coffee afternoons. And each time, he felt a little piece of himself return. He picked up new hobbies, too. He joined a hiking group that explored Colorado trails early in the mornings. He signed up for a weekend photography class. He even started journaling, something he never thought he'd do. Each small step reminded him that he didn't need Emily to feel whole. He just needed the courage to reconnect with who he was before everything blurred. Meanwhile, Emily's messages grew quieter, less frequent, more fragile. Eventually, weeks passed without a single text. And then one day, Jenna, Emily's friend, reached out to him with a simple update. Emily moved, she said gently. She's in Seattle now, trying to start fresh. John didn't feel anger. He didn't feel satisfaction. He felt relief. A soft, calm relief that settled deep in his chest. Because some stories don't need a dramatic ending. Some people don't need to come back into your life. And some doors aren't meant to be reopened. He learned later that Emily and Evan didn't last long. Not because of him, but because relationships, built on secrecy and avoidance, tend to collapse under their own weight. It wasn't John's responsibility to fix it. It wasn't his burden to carry. It wasn't his pain to revisit. He simply wished her well from afar, quietly, sincerely, the same way you wish well to someone who once mattered, but no longer shapes your life. And with every passing day, John grew stronger. Not louder, not colder, not hardened, just wiser. He learned to trust his instincts again. He learned to listen to silence when it speaks louder than words. He learned that love doesn't require you to chase someone who's already walking away. By the time summer reached Denver, John felt like a new version of himself, not rebuilt from scratch but restored. Like someone who had finally stepped back into the truth of who he was. He wasn't defined by betrayal anymore. He wasn't held back by what happened. He had become someone better because of it. Someone who understood that sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the ones that set you free. John used to think the hardest part of heartbreak was the moment someone walked away. But now, standing months removed from everything he survived, he realized something far more powerful. The hardest part wasn't losing Emily. It was losing the version of himself who ignored the signs, who begged for clarity he already had, who stayed silent even when the truth was speaking louder than words. And in that quiet, reflective space, the one between what happened and what he learned, John finally understood the lesson life had been trying to teach him. Silence isn't empty. Silence is information. Silence is truth spoken in a language the heart often refuses to hear. He remembered all the nights Emily came home late, avoiding his eyes. All the unanswered texts. All the sudden secrets she protected more fiercely than their relationship. He didn't need explanations. He didn't need apologies. Everything he needed was already there. In the quiet moments where she chose distance over honesty, John learned that when someone starts to drift, they leave clues long before they leave the room. Not in dramatic arguments, not in loud disagreements, but in small changes, the shift of their tone, the new passwords. The way they guard their phone like it carries a confession. He understood now. Silence often exposes what words try to hide. And as he looked back on the entire journey, the disappearance, the venue betrayal, the confrontation, the truth, he didn't feel anger anymore. He felt clarity. He felt something like justice. But not the loud kind, not revenge, not bitterness. It was a quiet justice. An emotional balance restored inside him, because he didn't fall apart. He didn't crumble under the weight of betrayal. He didn't let Emily's choices destroy who was. Instead, he rebuilt. He grew. He learned. He learned that trust should never require you to lose yourself. He learned that love should never feel like guessing. He learned that the right person doesn't disappear when things get serious. They show up even stronger. One evening, while sitting on his balcony overlooking the Denver skyline, John whispered a line he would carry with him forever. A line born from pain, shaped by truth, and strengthened by everything he overcame. Never chase someone who has already turned their back. Because chasing doesn't bring people closer. Chasing only pulls you further from yourself. And anyone who chooses to walk away is already telling you exactly where you stand in their story. He realized something else too. Something even more important. Every ending carries a gift. His gift wasn't closure from Emily. It wasn't understanding her reasons. It wasn't hearing the apology he once desperately wanted. His gift was himself, the stronger, wiser version. The one who knew his worth. The one who learned to protect his peace. The one who understood that real love never hides, never avoids, never replaces you behind your back. As the night breeze brushed against him, John felt a calm smile from Emily. Leaving didn't break him. It freed him. It freed him from uncertainty. It freed him from silence. It freed him from a future built on someone else's doubt. And with that freedom came a new beginning. A beginning he would walk into with open eyes, steady steps, and a heart that finally knew what it deserved. Because some stories don't end with revenge. They end with growth. They end with clarity. They end with emotional justice, the kind that stays with you long after the pain disappears. If John's journey moved you, if his strength, clarity, and growth touched something in you, then don't leave just yet. Stories like this are only the beginning. Hit subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. Tap like if you believe healing is its own kind of justice. And share this video with someone who needs a reminder. You deserve honesty. You deserve peace. And walking away from the wrong person is how you make room for the right one. Thanks for watching, and stay strong. Your next story starts now.